Hi, welcome back to Tansson TV Plus. Of course, I am Brandon.
And Mom, we're so happy you're able to join us today for another exciting day of discussing a first episode.
Yes, and so today we're excited to be discussing.
Today we're going to be discussing the Ropers.
Yes, and so this show I know I absolutely love and enjoy, and I'm very excited for us to, be discussing it. And actually, the first two episodes.
Yes, we sure will, Brandon.
Yeah, and so just to provide a little bit of insight, so this series lasted for 2 seasons, and it was a spinoff of the very popular series Freeze Company for the landlords Helen and Stanley Ropers, hence the name The Ropers. And yeah, like I said, it lasted for 2 seasons, but very little episodes, and so definitely a very niche show, but nevertheless, I'm excited to be discussing the first two episodes of this 28 episode series.
All right. All right, Brandon, and I'm just going to give a little bit of just a brief overview of just the show itself for those people who aren't familiar. The Ropers, as you said, is a spinoff of a Three's Company, and the two landlords that were in Three's Company have moved to they are deciding to move because they have sold their apartment. And so, since they sold their apartment, they're looking for some place to live, and they decide to visit I guess, a townhouse, and so they meet when they go to visit the townhouse. They meet their new neighbors, and we discover that they get along well with the wife next door and the son next door, but not necessarily with the husband next door. But anyway, so that just proves to give them a little bit of a foil between the neighbors. But but for these first two episodes, they find the house and then they move in on the second part of the for the second episode.
Yes, and so for this first episode, titled "Moving On," that aired on March 13th of '79. It aired immediately after the Freeze Company episode, where the landlords announced that, that they surprised, I guess, the Freeze Company characters and saying, "Hey, we're moving," and so we, fall right into the action. And even though, for our discussions, we only watched the Ropers episodes, I will say that it fits right in because it can feel like either the first episode of the Ropers or another episode of Freeze Company.
Yeah, I felt that way too when I watched it. It was very nice that they actually started it actually in their old apartment that was on Three's Company, and then you get to see them kind of go back and forth as they're trying to make a decision about whether or not they're buying the townhouse.
Yeah, and I will note that that first episode is also sometimes included within the Freeze Company's syndication package. It was very difficult to try to find the first episode.
Yes, I know. We looked everywhere trying to find that episode.
Yeah, and so because most places we see it start with episode two, but yeah, but I did want to discuss the first episode a little bit. So yeah, so since as you just mentioned, we have the nice foil between the neighbors, of the Ropers and them, and so overall, like, what were your thoughts about that? That first episode, and bring the Ropers out to a new environment.
I thought it was great because what I really liked about the episodes, they kept the same essence of the Ropers. And so Stanley was being Stanley. He said he didn't like the place, didn't want to move there, didn't want change. Whereas Helen was very excited to actually move into this new neighborhood and to meet new people. And they did a really nice job of showing how the neighbors with the perception that the neighbors had, especially the husband. He came in with a very nice car, and then you have the Ropers that come in with a car that's smoking, and so you just kind of showed the difference just right away between the two, and they just barge in. They, meaning the Ropers, just kind of barge over at any time when they needed to see them, and so. I thought they did a nice job within one episode and really just about 20 minutes, just kind of showing what the series is really going to be about at these two neighbors who, even though they appeared not to like each other, they really end up liking each other.
Yeah, and I will say too that that the neighbors tried to use a tactic to sort of, well, I should say, Mr. Brooks next door, who's also a real estate agent, does a lot of tactics to try to make sure the Ropers, don't come in because they're not their type of people. But I think it all sort of works out though, and I will say, connecting thing between the two episodes is that is actually with the Brooks' son David, and sort of I think his relationship with both his dad and with eventually Mr. Roper.
Yeah, David he's the cute kid. That's what I can say for the show. He's the cute kid in the show. He has a very calm demeanor, and he's able to, I think, probably win over Stanley much quicker than anyone.
Yeah, and so within the second episode, of course, or mom, if you can give a little synopsis for that.
Well, for the second episode, this is, of course, the move-in episode, and it's actually called Friends and Neighbors, and so also came out in 1979. But yes, in this particular episode, they move in, and then Helen goes over to the neighbor's house because she's kind of invited over. And in the meantime, Stanley's taking a bath while Helen's over visiting the neighbors. Well, since Stanley is not familiar where everything is, he can't find the towels, he is running the bath and he leaves the bath water on and he goes, and then he goes next door, asks where the towels are. In the meantime, he goes back home and he is locked out. And so that's basically the essence of this particular episode is that Stanley is locked out of the house and that they got to figure out a way to get Stanley back in the house. But at the same time, the neighbors were going to have a congressman over, and so they didn't want the Ropers there for the congressman. And as the congressman and his wife, and so they do get Stanley back in the house. But he does come on out again, and he goes over and he just kind of bothers the congressman. At the end, we do find out later that Stanley, he left the water on, and so the water is now flooding down the stairs. So that's basically the episode in a nutshell.
Oh, Stanley.
Yes, oh Stanley.
Yeah, I certainly, love viewing the Ropers. I really love, I think, the comedic aspects of, of the series and of the characters themselves.
Yeah, I just like the way Stanley can look in the camera and just make you laugh, and I think that's part of the fun of the show. And then just watching the neighbors as they're watching both Stanley and Helen, and just to realize, oh, these people aren't they're all together there. And so, like I said, and it's just really nice to see they were able to keep that same banter that was going on in Three's Company, but at the same time, they do talk about in very broad sense Three's Company, so they're still linking the shows together.
Yeah, especially in that first episode, I know we discussed that, yeah, in a lot of these spin-off series, that the first episode oftentimes has some sort of, a major tie to the originating series. In this case, it's that, yeah, Helen referring to them as, as the kids, and which Mr. Brooks completely misinterprets, although it's very easy for him to do that.
Yes, Mr. Brooks thought that they were her kids, so yes, yes.
But yeah, but like I said before, the one connective thing, between these two episodes though, is in the first episode we can see that David misses spending time, with his dad, and Mr. Brooks is like, you should just have some imaginary friends. I had plenty of them when I was your age. And then in episode two, David has an imaginary dog friend.
Yeah, and his father was not too pleased about that.
Yeah, so it's very interesting to see that there is that continuity between that, but it's amusing that he doesn't approve of it by episode two, even though it was a suggestion in episode one.
Yes, yes.
But yeah, but mom, overall, what do you think about this series as a whole? I know, like I said before, I really enjoyed this series, and I love that it sort of keeps with the physical comedy as well that is known from Three's Company.
Yeah, I know it's a short-lived series, but I thought they did a really nice job with the short-lived series. It makes you laugh. I mean, we're talking this series aired in '79, and then you look at it now, and it makes me laugh. I had fun actually, kind of looking at some of the things that were popular at that time period. When you look at the house and things like that, and so that was kind of fun to watch to see how the decor has changed over the course of the years and think, you know, such as that, and the technology and things. So, but yeah,
Yeah, especially considering that, yeah, as Mrs. Roper states a few times within the first episodes, that this is more of a, yeah, higher class community, and and a little bit more uppity. So it's interesting to see like the perception of a uppity neighborhood then in 1979.
yes, yes. It really was interesting to hear how they described and how they were actually looking in the magazine to see, oh, this is the way this neighborhood is. This is the way it's presented, and the newer neighborhood and everything that went along with, them wanting to move to this area.
Yeah, one thing that I will note is that the series had 2 seasons, and and from my research from several years ago, that one of the reasons it's believed that it had 2 seasons was because that the Ropers were guaranteed, the characters were guaranteed to return back to Freeze Company had the show not lasted a full season, and so by it having a 2 season series, even though it only had 28 episodes, which a traditional show is 22 for one season, then they were not required to come back to the show, even though they did have one episode that they came back for.
Yeah, they did have one episode to kind of, I think, wrap it all up. I can't remember the details of that particular episode, but I do remember seeing them back on Three's Company.
Yeah, I definitely have, remember that episode, The Night of the Ropers. But the reason I bring that up, and I know many people say that they, don't care for the show. I personally love it. But I was doing a little bit of research before this discussion. And apparently, the creators of the show were trying to actually propose a spinoff back, I believe, in around 1986.
Oh, really? No, that I didn't know.
Yeah, so apparently after Too Close for Comfort came to a unexpected end, they were thinking about bringing back The Ropers as a new show called Free Apartments. That was going to replace Too Close for Comfort.
Wow, that's really interesting, Brandon. I had no idea. So you've told me something new.
Yeah, I had no idea about it. From even my my numerous times, of course, of visiting the show. But I was in preparation for this, I just came across it, and so I would have loved for that have come to fruition, because I thought that would have been a really nice idea to bring the Ropers back in a yet another new environment. But I guess we'll never know.
Yeah, yeah. It would have been interesting to see them 5 years later and see what they would have done with them as characters.
Yeah, definitely. But I will say too that the Ropers still remain somewhat popular, because I believe a few months ago we actually saw like Mrs. Roper parties like on the news and everything.
Yeah, we did. I do remember hearing about Mrs. Roper party. So, so yes, I guess the Ropers are just kind of here to stay, aren't they?
Yeah, it certainly seems like that. But Mom, before we end this out, I did want to say, what are your thoughts about the Ropers theme song?
Well, it's amusing just like they are. So, I mean, if you know the show, you know how it sounds. It's not a theme song because it is just instrumental. So it's not a theme song that a lot of people are going to know. You would have to watch the Ropers to be able to pick it up other places.
But yeah, but nevertheless, like I said, I really enjoyed this series, and I'm so glad that we're able to have this discussion.
Yep, same here. We hope everyone else is able to just take a look at the Ropers and see what you think.
Yeah, definitely, and let us know in the comments, or if there are any other shows that you'd like for us to discuss.
Yes, please do.
Well, until next time, have a wonderful day.
Yes, thank you guys for joining us again today. Y'all have a great day.
And we'll see you next time.
Bye bye.